All right. Rob, if you'll get started with the third step prayer, sir.
Of course. Hi, everybody. Rob K., recovered alcoholic, and page 63 of your big book for the third step prayer. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.
All right. Okay, we are on page 136, which is the beginning of chapter 10, to employers. Rob, if you'll go ahead and get started.
Okay, chapter 10, to employers. Among many employers nowadays, we think of one member who has spent much of his life in the world of big business. He has hired and fired hundreds of men. He knows the alcoholic as the employer sees him. His present views ought to prove exceptionally useful to businessmen everywhere, but let him tell you.
Yep, we're going to be starting here. Just as a couple of notes here, Hank Parkhurst wrote this chapter. And he was, well, there's so much to say about Hank Parkhurst. It would take almost half the meeting, but he's an important person in the writing of this book, as well as getting the book published and out there. It is impressive that he did what he did. He was sober for 4 years, and unfortunately went back out to drink shortly after this book was published. And because of that, he's been essentially on the surface, he's been erased from most of the historical stuff that has to do with AA. But had he stayed sober, it is likely that he would have been considered one of the founders of AA, much like Bill and Dr. Bob. Rob?
Yeah, Hank Parkhurst. If you've ever gone to any of the meetings about writing the big book or have read the book, without Hank Parkhurst, there would be no big book. Hank pushed Bill to write the big book. Pushed him and pushed him and pushed him. Bill had never written a book before, so I'm sure his thoughts and ideas were, I've never done this, I can't do this. But you know what? Hank kept on to get this book done. We need a book. We need a book. We need a book. I'll raise the funds for it. Hank was a dynamo, just an absolute dynamo. They said he had an idea a minute, and that was going to make everybody rich. That the big book was going to sell carloads. And when he meant carloads, he meant railroad cars full of big books that were going to be sold. So his ideas were never small; they were always grandiose. So typical alcoholic. We never think small; we only think big. But again, as Bill Shaberg in Writing the Big Book says, no Hank, no big book. So the first part of this was Bill introducing, basically. Hank is going to write the rest of the story now. I was at one time assistant manager of a corporation department, employing 6,600 men. One day my secretary came in saying that Mr. B insisted on speaking to me. I told her to say that I was not interested. I'd warned him several times that he had but one more chance. Not long afterward, he had called me from Hartford on 2 successive days, so drunk he could hardly speak. I was told he was through, finally, and forever.
So we're introducing what I would consider as a largely fictitious person here, but it's they are using real life experiences. This chapter, while it is to employers, it is also a great chapter for sponsors, and in doing so, it is a great how to approach, how to accept, how to deal with, how to be empathetic to alcoholics and their plight. So a good introduction is going to go for the next couple of I'm sorry, paragraphs.
Yep. Now we remember Hank Parker's worked for Standard Oil. Standard Oil is owned by J.D. Rockefeller, in Chicago. You know, later on, where is Bill going to try to get financing for his big book and for the missionaries and for the hospitals? J.D. Rockefeller. Okay, so Hank worked at one time for the Rockefeller Company. My secretary returned to say that it was not Mr. B on the phone. It was Mr. B's brother, and he wished to give me a message. I still expected a plea for clemency, but these words came through the receiver. I just wanted to tell you Paul jumped from a hotel window in Hartford last Saturday. He left us a note saying you were the best boss he ever had, and that you were not to blame in any way.
Yeah, so we're basically going to see here where there's been multiple times that this particular employee had approached the employer, and after a period of time, finally the employer had had enough, didn't want to speak with Mr. B, as it were, and unfortunately, Mr. B took his own life, and that happens in some cases with alcoholics that are very, very far gone. Right?
Yeah, one of the problems is that when an alcoholic sees no way out, that living just becomes unbearable. They don't know what else to do. What other option? Suicide. You know, we know that earlier on in the book, Bill Cousins had committed suicide in Bill's home. You know, he had sold off Bill and Lois's dress clothes. You know, so no way out. So no solution. He took his own life. Another time, as I opened a letter which lay on my desk, a newspaper clipping fell out. It was the obituary of one of the best salesmen I ever had. After 2 weeks of drinking, he had placed his toe on the trigger of a loaded shotgun. The barrel was in his mouth. I had discharged him for drinking 6 weeks before.
Again, here we are as a situation where you've got a really good employee, and he's been discharged for his drinking, and it just continued on. And just like Rob had just said, a lot of people don't see a way out other than to take their own lives. It's not. I don't think it happens terribly often, but it does happen, and it's unfortunate when it does, because these are some of the people that still have an opportunity to be saved via this program. Rob?
Yeah, Leo, I want to go to page 25 for a second and just read a paragraph. You know, all through the book, you know, Bill says something, but he has already said it somewhere else. He's trying to drive home a point. If you were as seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe there's no middle of the road solution. We were in a position where life was becoming impossible. And if we had passed into a region from which there is no return through human aid, we had but two alternatives. One was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could, and the other, to accept spiritual help. This we did because we honestly wanted to and were willing to make the effort. You know, I think of Dr. Bob's story, which we will read not long from now. And Dr. Bob, for 17 years, would wake up in the morning, you know, take pills in order to stop his hands from shaking so he could go to work and make money in order to buy liquor on the way home. 17 years. I always think of that as being the hamster on the wheel. You know, we're going around and around and around, not getting anywhere, you know, doing the same thing over and over. And if we don't see any solution, what option do we have? Okay, that's why it's important that we know what the solution is. Okay, so it's really important for us to get out there and to help people, to offer it to them. Let's be honest, we can't, not everybody wants to hear from us, not everybody wants to take what we have, but it is up to us to at least offer to them, to plant the seed that hopefully it will one day take root. and we'll be able to help those people. Still another experience. A woman's voice came faintly over long distance from Virginia. She wanted to know if her husband's company insurance was still in force. 4 days before, he had hanged himself in his woodshed. I've been obliged to discharge him for drinking, though he is a brilliant, alert, and one of the best organizers I have ever known.
Yeah. And here, I think, is one of the other things that are true of a lot of alcoholics, and that is that they tend to be some of the best employees that you have. They just unfortunately lose their way and either are tardy or absent and not doing their work and their job. They once, were some of the best employers that you ever had, but now have lost their way. And here are some more examples of that. Again, they've gone to the extreme and taken their own lives, which is unfortunate. And at the same time, there's an admission here by of the employer that he is now a little bit more educated. So we're going to see what the difference is now as opposed to what the difference was then. Rob?
Yeah, these first three stories are not very heartwarming, that's for sure. But you know what? It does happen, and that's the extreme. So let's get out there and help people as best we can. Here were three exceptional men lost to this world because I did not understand alcoholism as I do now. What irony! I became an alcoholic myself, and but for the intervention of an understanding person, I might have followed in their footsteps. My downfall cost the business community unknown thousands of dollars, for it takes real money to train a man for an executive position. This kind of waste goes on unabated. We think the business fabric is shot through with a situation which might be helped by better understanding all around.
Yeah, and we can see a couple of things here. One is that keeping an employee, a good employee, over time, working with them and through their alcoholism is actually far less expensive than going out and finding a new employee and then training them up to the executive level of a company. And so the other thing too is that the employer is finally admitting, not finally, but just admitting at this point that he too had become an alcoholic. And if it hadn't been for somebody that came in and helped him, he would have probably been lost as well, even though his alcoholism did in fact cost the company large amounts of money. Rob?
Yeah, and I'm just going to go to page 18 for 1 second because that is where it brings up this. Because it says here on page 137, I became an alcoholic myself, and but for the intervention of an understanding person. Page 18 says, in squiggly writing, but the excellent drinker who has found this solution, who is properly armed with facts about himself, can generally win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. Until such an understanding is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. So we can get through to people where other people cannot. So keep on the firing line. Nearly every modern employer feels a moral responsibility for the well-being of his help, and he tries to meet these responsibilities. That he has not always done so for the alcoholic is easily understood. To him, the alcoholic has often seemed a fool of the first magnitude. Because of the employee's special ability or of his own strong personal attachment to him, the employer has sometimes kept such a man at work long beyond a reasonable period. Some employers have tried every known remedy. In only a few instances has there been a lack of patience and tolerance. And we, who have imposed on the best of employers, can scarcely blame them if they have been short with us.
Yep. And so we're, as we kind of explained here, the employee's special ability or of his own strong personal attachment to him, the employer sometimes kept such a man at work long beyond a reasonable period. And And we're talking, I think there's really two things here, keeping somebody on and trying every known remedy at this point in time, in this day and age, that normally includes some type of rehabilitation, a period of time that gives them away from work, such as, let's say, 30 days to go through a rehab program and then get involved in an AA program after that. Um, and bringing them back in, holding the job for them, that type of thing. There's a couple of things. One is you want to work with somebody as best you can for as long as you can, but at the same time, it sometimes is sometimes you do it for too long, and it actually ends up hurting the business. Remember, we're talking about a business, which is not unlike a family to some extent, but still, you want to work with them as far as they are willing to work with you. And that's another important part here is that the alcoholic must be willing to do their part, which is the lion's share of things, by the way, to do their part. But nonetheless, this is, a business, and sometimes it is necessary to let them go. And sometimes that letting them go is the catalyst to get them back and started with their own recovery. Rob?
Yep. Well, we're at the top of page 138, everybody. Here, for instance, is a typical example. An officer of one of the largest banking institutions in America knows I no longer drink. One day he told me about an executive of the same bank who, from his description, was undoubtedly alcoholic. This seemed to me like an opportunity to be helpful. So I spent 2 hours talking about alcoholism, the malady, and described the symptoms and results as well as I could. His comment was very interesting, but I'm sure this man is done drinking. He has just returned from a 3-month leave of absence, has taken a cure, looks fine, and to clinch the matter, the board of directors told him this was his last chance.
Right. And I think in terms of the story here, I think we're talking about Clarence Snyder that is making reference to. And it's an executive level, obviously, because if the board of directors are involved, then that would be an executive level person. And at the same time, they've given him basically this leave of absence, 3 months of rehabilitation and recovery time, and it's been told him that it's his last chance. And I think in terms of where a company is, if you're going to give somebody a chance, certainly 3 months of time off in order to get recovered is a nice. Well, even today is probably excessive, but it is a nice thing to do for the employee. Rob?
Yeah, in Bill Wilson's story, he talks about he was in Towns Hospital 3 times. Well, we know from Pass It On and other books that he was in Towns Hospital 4 times. In the story The Unbeliever, which was Hank Parker wrote and was in the first edition, he says he was in rehab 10 times. People would go to these rehab centers or Towns Hospital. They'd dry them out for 5 days, give them the belladonna treatment, the puke and purge, and send them on their way. What has changed? Nothing. Nothing has changed in their life. So what makes you think that they're not going to drink again? Okay. As I think it was who was it that said if nothing changes, nothing changes. You know, you can take the alcohol out of the alcoholic, but they're going to find it again. So, this is the whole thing, is that Bill came up with a program of action. Okay, came up with the 12 steps to have a spiritual experience to change, to take us from being selfish and self-centered into people that cared about others and thought about other people. Stop thinking about ourselves 24/7 and start thinking about other people. That is change. And that's what Dr. Silkworth talked about. That's what Carl Jung talked about, is change. Okay, we have to change the way the alcoholic looks at things. And a lot of too many people that are non-alcoholics and you can't really blame them because they don't know any better, believe that it is a moral failing. That if you really wanted to quit, you could do it. Why? Because they can. They don't, they can take a drink or leave it. A heavy drinker, given sufficient reason, can stop or moderate. It may be difficult, but they can do it. Okay. So that's their perception of these other people. Now it's a question of trying to educate people. Let the family understand that, it's not a moral failing. They have a disease. The only answer I could make was that if the man followed the usual pattern, he would go on a bigger bust than ever. I felt this was inevitable and wondered if the bank was doing the man an injustice. Why not bring him into contact with some of our alcohol crowd? He might have a chance. I pointed out that I had had nothing to drink whatever for 3 years, and this, in the face of difficulty, that would have made 9 out of 10 men drink their heads off. Why not at least afford him an opportunity to hear my story? Oh no, said my friend. This chap is either through with liquor or he is minus a job. If he has your willpower and guts, he will make the grade.
Willpower and guts. That's one of the things that we learn in AA that is not possible. It's if it was, then we wouldn't be meeting today, and we wouldn't be a part of this program, and AA probably wouldn't exist. And then the short-sightedness of this person and saying that the chap is either through with liquor or he's minus a job. It's really kind of an all or none situation. Sure, that could be a catalyst to getting somebody sober and get them on the road to recovery. But the real recovery comes when they learn that they need to tap into this inner strength, this higher power, the ability to rely on something else to help them through their drinking or the stopping of their drinking. So again, we're looking at one employer that has an awareness and knowledge and education of how to stop drinking, is trying to impress upon the other employer that if there was some opportunity there, maybe a chance to talk to this person and save them would be appropriate, but then the employer is saying no, they're still closed-minded, still uneducated, and don't see it quite the way it should be.
They have no understanding of alcoholism, and that it's not a moral failing. Hey, the alcoholic with all his heart wants to stop, but non-alcoholics are people that can drink normally. They think, well, it's your job or quit alcohol. It's an easy decision to make. Yeah, if we didn't have the obsession of the mind, it would be an easy decision. We've already made the decision. We're not going to drink again. But then this starts going crazy. And it tells us that, it'll be different this time. Go ahead, Ron, take that drink. You'll be fine. It won't hurt you this time. But you know what? We have step one. We realize we're powerless over alcohol, that we can never safely take a drink. We've smashed the idea. Okay, the idea might come to us, but then we realize I have the allergy. If I take that drink, I'm just going to be off to the races. If we're in fit spiritual condition. So I wanted to throw up my hands in discouragement, for I saw that I had failed to help my banker friend understand. He simply could not believe that his brother executive suffered from a serious illness. There was nothing to do but wait.
Right. And that is the shortcoming that so many employers even today have, and that is that they don't see the value or the benefit of really helping an alcoholic employee with getting in touch with those that are a part of AA. So very, very common response even today. Excuse me. Rob?
Yep, there was nothing to do but wait. Wait for the guy to go out on the last bender. Linda, we're on page 139 at the top of the page. Great to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
All right,
Presently,
thank you.
presently, the man did slip and was fired. Following his discharge, we contacted him. Without much ado, he accepted the principles and procedure that had helped us. He is undoubtedly on the road to recovery. To me, this incident illustrates lack of understanding as to what really ails the alcoholic and lack of knowledge as to what part employers might profitably take in salvaging their sick employees.
Right. And the operative word here is profitably take in salvaging their sick employees. Again, it's far less expensive to help and assist a current employee as opposed to going out and finding a new employee, because there's the posting of the job, there is the time spent weeding through resumes, and then going through the interview process. Then with the hiring, there's the training, and then the ramping up. There is that period of time the employee is going to take in order to get comfortable with their jobs and then start to produce, et cetera, et cetera. And keeping a current employee, it's far less expensive to work with them in terms of doing the AA program with them than it is to let them go and go out and find a new employee. Rob?
Now, I'm not an employer, but I can use this to help a sponsee. Why? When I came into the fellowship, I knew that I drank too much, but I had no idea why. I needed to be educated on why do I drink the way I drink. I have sworn over and over, I've made solemn oaths. I didn't write it in the family Bible like Bill Wilson did, but I made solemn oaths to myself and to my loved one that I wasn't going to drink again. But I continued on, and I did not know why. I came into the fellowship, and it took a while, and then somebody explained it to me. Why I drank the way I drank. I too, the alcoholic, needed to be educated. Okay, it's not just other people, it's not just the family, but it's also the new person coming into the room who doesn't understand what they're suffering from. So, as I say, this information can also be used for a sponsee or for the newcomer coming into the rooms. If you desire help, it might be well to disregard your own drinking or lack of it. Whether you are a hard drinker, a moderate drinker, or a teetotaler, you may have some pretty strong opinions, perhaps prejudices. Those who drink moderately may be more annoyed with an alcoholic than a total abstainer would be. Drinking occasionally and understanding your own reaction, it is possible for you to become quite sure of many things, which, so far as the alcoholic is concerned, are not always so. As a moderate drinker, you can take your liquor or leave it alone. Whatever you want, whenever you want to, you control your drinking. Of an evening, you can go on a mild bender, get up in the morning, shake your head, and go to business. To you, liquor is no real problem. You cannot see why it should be to anyone else, save the spineless and stupid.
Yeah. So interesting paragraph here, actually. We go into talking to and about the moderate drinker. We've learned before that the moderate drinker is one that can stop or leave it alone at will without any issues. They probably are the type of people that might leave something in their glass when they leave a table, which is crazy talk or crazy compared for us alcoholics. And that also is that they don't understand the alcoholic, and that the alcoholic has no choice and continues to drink. But they also have an opinion, and they've asserted that the moderate drinker thinks that alcoholics might be spineless or stupid. And really, if you think in terms of stupidity, ignorance, I think is probably a better and more appropriate word here. The moderate drinker is probably far more ignorant to what's going on than not. So But nonetheless, it is a reference to the moderate drinker. We've heard this before, and it is giving an example of those that just don't understand the alcoholic. Rob?
Leo, when my kids went to school and they had to take their lunch to school, there was a young guy there and he had a peanut allergy. So my kids were never allowed to take peanut butter or anything with nuts or anything like that to school. Why? Because they respected the fact that their little buddy had an allergy to it. So they're not going to take, something that could hurt him. Okay. The problem is that most people don't have the allergy to liquor that we have. And so they don't understand. And we keep going over this. They don't understand. They can take it or leave it alone. They can control and enjoy their drinking. I can control my drinking, but I'm miserable when I'm doing it. Boy, I'm telling you, I've never been so miserable in my life when I have to go to someplace and I'm only allowed to have a couple of drinks. Why? Because my body's craving more, But other people don't understand that. Rob, why are you so uptight? Why you seem angry? Yeah, well, I can't do what I want to do. Right now, I just want to get a couple of drinks in me to feel better. But they don't understand that. Normal drinkers do not understand that. So we have to have a little bit of patience with that. And as I say, or as I said a few minutes ago, is that we have to educate alcoholics that are new coming into the fellowship on what they're suffering from because they don't understand it either. We're near the bottom of 139. When dealing with an alcoholic, there may be a natural annoyance that a man could be so weak, stupid, and irresponsible. Even when you understand the malady better, you may feel this feeling rising.
Yeah, it's just a quick reference here again, back to the last sentence that was of this previous paragraph. This one is also basically it's rhetorical in the sense that we're basically saying that those that are not alcoholic, that are not afflicted with the drink problem, just don't understand people that are alcoholic, and that is, and oftentimes the feelings, this resentment that might build up in them, and I think that this word weakness is an appropriate one in that that's what people feel about alcoholics, that they're just weak, that they just don't have the willpower in order to stop drinking, that they won't stop drinking because they just choose to drink, and that is that ignorance that we were talking about, that uneducated insight as to the alcoholic itself. Rob?
Yeah. It's so frustrating at times to know what needs to happen. It can't happen. One of my best buddies in the Fellowship of AA, his brother is also an alcoholic. Well, my buddy, he has done the 12 steps, had a spiritual experience, and has been sober for about 10 years now. His brother is in and out of the program. The sober brother is so frustrated, doesn't want to have anything to do with his brother that keeps relapsing. He's having a problem trying to understand, why am I willing to do these steps, but my brother is not? And he has no time for his brother, has no patience. We have to remember, in this book, it talked about Bill Wilson. 6 times they went to see this man. 6 times he was in a hospital and they went to visit him. We don't give up on people. Okay. If they are willing, we are willing to help them as best we can. Okay. So please keep that in mind. Okay. Some people come into the fellowship and they seem to get it. They seem to have hit their bottom. They're willing to, they realize that they're beyond human aid, or they learn it, and off they go to the races. There's others that come in and they struggle and struggle. What they need somebody, keep working with them. Give them a little pat on the back every once in a while and say, you know what? You can do it.
Yep.
This is what we need to do. A look at it in the alcoholic in your organization is many times illuminating. Is he not usually bright, fast thinking, imaginative, and likable? When sober, does he not work hard and have a knack of getting things done? If he had these qualities and did not drink, would he be worth retaining? Should he have the same consideration as other ailing employees? Is he worth salvaging? If your decision is yes, whether the reason be humanitarian or business or both, then the following suggestions may be helpful.
Yeah, we're going into kind of again, this is good for sponsors as well as employers, but we're talking about somebody that is a high functioning employee that is a contributor to the value of the company, and one that you would, if they weren't drinking, you would be this would be somebody you would be very glad to see. If they also make reference to the same consideration as other ailing employees, you know, other employees that are sick, you let them find medical care and help. You don't let them go. And the idea here is that we're making reference to the fact that the alcoholic is also ailing as well. So just a good introduction into these next few suggestions. Again, this is going to be good for the sponsor as well as the employer.
So we're on page 140. Can you discard the feeling that you are dealing only with habit, with stubbornness, or a weak will? If this presents difficulty, rereading chapters 2 and 3, where the alcoholic sickness is discussed at length, might be worthwhile. You as a businessman want to know the necessities before considering the result. If you can see that your employee is ill, can he be forgiven for what he has done in the past? Can his past absurdities be forgotten? Can it be appreciated that he has been a victim of crooked thinking, directly caused by the action of alcohol on his brain?
Yeah. And what we're basically doing is asking some rhetorical questions. So the answer should be yes here, in that can it be appreciated that he has been a victim of crooked thinking directly caused by the action of alcohol on his brain? Yes. So with that, there's strong consideration for the employee and to their plight and their need for assistance, their need for help, and you providing it in some form or fashion with regard to the rehab, other AA programs that might benefit them, getting them in touch with another employee that has recovered, and get them to talk about their malady and etc. So this is, again, we're just trying to make some suggestions here on how to deal with an alcoholic employee that is worth saving. Rob?
Yep. What I'm going to read next is quite shocking to me, but we'll talk about it afterwards. I well remember the shock I received when a prominent doctor in Chicago told me of cases where pressure of the spinal fluid actually ruptured the brain. No wonder an alcoholic is strangely irrational. Who wouldn't be? With such a fevered brain, normal drinkers are not so affected, nor can they understand the aberrations of the alcoholic.
Right. And that's basically, again, we're making reference to the fact that the alcoholic has no control over their drinking, and their brains are affected by alcohol, and that's a part of their sickness. Rob?
Yeah. Now, Roland Hazard went to the doctor, Dr. Cowles, and what they would do is they would take a syringe put it in his back, and draw off some spinal fluid. They would do this in the office. I have an article that I read about it, and the lengths that people will go. They think that there is a cure, for the alcoholic. So I'm willing to try it. Roland Hazard, you know, God bless the man. He tried everything. He tried tons of people, Richard Peabody, anybody you could go to try to find relief from his alcoholism. Dr. Young, he went to see him, but think about it, doing a spinal tap, taking spinal fluid out of your body sounds crazy to me.
Was
But you know what? Hey, we think this might help. I'll try it. I'll try anything to get well. Your man has probably been trying to conceal a number of scrapes, perhaps messy, pretty messy ones. They may be disgusting. You may be at a loss to understand how such a seemingly above-board chap could be so involved. But these scrapes can generally be charged, no matter how bad, to the abnormal action of alcohol on his mind. When drinking or getting over a bout, an alcoholic sometimes, the model of honesty, when normal, will do incredible things. Afterward, his revulsion will be terrible. Nearly always, these antics indicate nothing more than temporary conditions.
Yeah, and we're talking too is getting over the bout of an alcohol. Sometimes the model of honesty. A lot of times you're at your point of getting over a spree or a debacle of drinking. You are most honest in that you obviously blame the alcoholism on the problems that you created. You are willing to make amends. You swear that you're never going to drink again, et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of that period of time, and then unfortunately, you revert back after you start to feel better, and that's where the real problem is. But the guilt, the remorse is relatively strong in somebody that's just getting over a bad time of drinking. But they do, like it says here, indicate nothing more than temporary conditions. Again, we're talking about somebody who has no control over their drinking. They are alcoholic. They feel like that they can get control of it because they feel sick. They are aware of what they just did. Maybe they're not aware of everything that they just did, but they've got people telling them what they did, and they're repulsed by it, and are trying to at that point in time are trying to say that they're ready to stop drinking. Rob?
Yeah, I put in the chat the pressure on the brain. It's an article by Dr. Cowell. If you're interested on how the treatment was done, by all means, download it. It's not a difficult read and it's not a long read, but it's interesting what, as I say, they would do this in the office, you know, just
A heck
wow.
of a headache, I would say, afterwards.
Well, yeah, you would think so, wouldn't you? But you hear about pregnant women getting an epidural, and when they take the needle and put it in the spine, they say, "Don't move," because if this goes the wrong way, you can become paralyzed. And that's what my brain thinks of is that, you can paralyze somebody doing this, but I don't know. Oh well. This is not to say that all alcoholics are honest and upright when not drinking. Of course, that isn't so. And such people often may impose on you. Seeing your attempt to understand and help, some men will try to take advantage of your kindness. If you are sure your man does not want to stop, he may as well be discharged. Sooner, the better. You are not doing him a favor by keeping him on. Firing such an individual may prove a blessing to him. It may be just the jolt he needs. I know in my own particular case that nothing my company could have done would have stopped me for so long as I was able to hold my position. I could not possibly realize how serious my situation was. Had they fired me first, and had they then taken steps to see that I was presented with the solution contained in this book, I might have returned to them 6 months later, a well man.
Yeah, so here's a reference to a couple of things. One is you've got an employee or a sponsee that is not willing to stop. They have made it clear that they're not willing to stop. They're not being genuine in their approach to it. And in that case, it may be better to move on from them and or to fire them and have that be a catalyst and something that gets their attention, and maybe they will come back later and really want to stop. But good reference here is to the fact that we're talking about somebody that's not willing to stop. We're not talking about the person that is willing to stop. So those that are not willing to stop and are bent on continuing, they aren't worth working with at the time. Perhaps maybe later in the future, but nonetheless are not worth working with now, and either should be let go and fired, or should be moved away from as a sponsor. Rob?
Yeah. Now you have to remember that at the beginning, Bill Wilson and Lois took people into their home. One guy committed suicide, stole their clothes, etc. But nobody got sober at that time, of the people that came into their home. Later on, some of them did. They had planted the seed. But if people are relying on you instead of relying on God, they're going to come to you. It's like the adage that give a man a fish and he'll be hungry tomorrow. Teach a man to fish and he will be able to feed himself forever. Now, and this is what Bill Wilson found, is that, they would he was bringing people home, destitute people, and they weren't getting sober. And so this is what Bill learned. It's one of the many things, the trial and error that Bill and Dr. Bob did, and so we have to remember things like that. People in a fellowship will take advantage of some people. There are people that come in and, they just want to borrow $20 and then you never see them again. You think you're doing a favor, but sometimes you're just, what's the word Al-Anon uses? You're assisting them. That's not the word I'm looking for. You're enabling them. You're just enabling people to take advantage of you. So please think about that. And Linda, I will put that in the chat in a little bit. But there are many men who want to stop, and with them you can go far. Your understanding treatment of their case will pay dividend. Perhaps you have such a man in mind. He wants to quit drinking, and you want to help him, even if it be only a matter of good business. You now know more about alcoholism. You can see that he is mentally and physically sick. You're willing to overlook his past performances. Suppose an approach is made something like this.
Yep, and we're now talking about somebody that is willing to stop drinking and wanting to stop drinking, and is somebody that is receptive to hearing what you have to say and looking at the program that AA has to offer. So we're getting into that now. Rob?
Yes, state that you know about his drinking and that it must stop. You might say you appreciate his abilities, would like to keep him, but cannot if he continues to drink. A firm attitude at this point has helped many of us.
Yeah, and I think that that's another thing for a sponsor to kind of take the approach with regard to a new sponsee, somebody that's come along that says that they really want to stop drinking. Firm but kind. I guess it's that idea behind it, is that you want to. I think I'm reminded when I hear this of the old days, I would say way back in the 60s and 70s, maybe 80s, where there was some old timers that took a very, very hard line approach to not drinking. I'm not sure where that came from, considering the fact that the book has been around since the 30s, and nowhere in there does it say be harsh or unkind to the the new sponsee and or the person that's trying to stop drinking. But nonetheless, that was a thing back then. It crops up every once in a while. I see it in some old timers approach, but I think it's in the minority now. But nonetheless, a firm attitude, meaning that, this is a serious situation. You are there to help them as long as they are willing to help themselves. And if they're not, then you're not. So basically, that's what we're trying to say here at this point in time. Bob?
Leo, is it time to bring in Mr. Bill?
Yep, it sure is.
Excellent.
Hi, this is Bill, alcoholic from New Jersey. Thanks a lot, guys. This is a good chapter. I like this. Like was mentioned, you can use this chapter for sponsoring. A lot of people that I know in AA swear by this chapter. Well, whether you're the employer or the sponsor, you're somebody that's working with an alcoholic. And this is giving some good suggestions here on how to deal with an alcoholic, because most people don't know how to deal with us. And Bill Wilson and the other people that were in AA at the time when they wrote this book, they understood if you help the spouse of the alcoholic or the family of the alcoholic or the employer of the alcoholic, that in turn helps the alcoholic stay sober. So what they were trying to do, they're trying to help the alcoholic by talking to the employer. And they used Hank because Hank was in a position when he was working that he was, he wasn't actually the employer, but he was representing the employer with the other employees. At the beginning of this chapter, it says he was the assistant manager. So he was in charge of a lot of people, and so he wrote this trying to give some instruction or some suggestion on how to deal with alcoholics. Because again, most people don't know how to deal with us. They just think that we're, useless troublemakers or crazy people or whatever. And that's not true. We're sick people and we need some kind of treatment. And I like when you talked about this here, Dr. Coles in Chicago. They had some pretty crazy things back in the day where they did spinal taps on people because this doctor insisted that people had too much spinal pressure on their brain from the spinal fluid, and if they relieved the pressure, they would cure their alcoholism. This was one of the crazy ideas that they came up with back then. And some of these people did it. And obviously it doesn't work. I hope I can get my money back. But obviously this kind of stuff doesn't work. Back in the day, they used to do all kinds of crazy things. They would put leeches on people, or they would cut people and let blood out of them to get rid of the bad blood. And this was another one of these crazy things. And like Rob pointed out, Roland Hazard had this done. He saw this doctor. And I imagine Hank must have at least seen him. I don't know if he went through the procedure because he mentions him here that the doctor told him this. So he must have at least talked to this doctor. Whether he got the treatment too, I don't know. But obviously that kind of stuff doesn't work, because if it did, they'd be doing it all over the place today in rehabs and stuff. So it just shows you some of the crazy things that people do. And alcoholics, because we want to get over alcoholism so we can drink normal again, we'll take any kind of crazy harebrained quack scheme that somebody comes up with. But as far as the pressure on the brain, I don't think that works. But I will tell you this, when it comes to alcohol, we have a broken brain. Because when it comes to alcohol, our willpower doesn't work, our choice doesn't work, our common sense, our thinking to drink through, all of that stuff is broken when it comes to alcoholism. And how do we fix it? We fix it by going through this 12-step process that we have. That's the best way that anybody's come up with on how to fix that broken brain thing. And what you have to do is you have to get God in your life, and God restores you to sanity. We don't restore ourselves to sanity. And that's basically what they're trying to say here. They're trying to tell you that all these quacky things don't work. And they're giving some instruction. Hank is giving instruction to people or suggestions to the employer on how to deal with an alcoholic. In other words, we're not bad people. We're sick people. We don't need to be kicked to the curb because that doesn't work with an alcoholic. What we need to be presented with the solution that's in this book. That's the best answer that they can come up with. And Hank was very qualified to be able to do this and to talk to other people about it. So realistically, all they're trying to do with these last chapters in this book, they're trying to help other people understand alcoholism a little bit better. Because most people that are not alcoholics don't have a clue what's going on with us. Again, they just think we're doing this because we're troublemakers or whatever. We're crazy people or troublemakers. They don't realize that we have an actual sickness or an actual illness. So they're just trying to give some suggestions here. And again, the suggestions in this chapter are really, really good for sponsoring someone. Whether you're the sponsor or the employer, if you're working with another alcoholic, there's good suggestions in here on how to deal with them. That's pretty much all I got. Thanks a lot for letting me share, guys.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Bill. All right, we'll close out with the Serenity Prayer, Rob. Thank you.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.